You know what's fucking even worse than that are the web pages that you go to and they decide to put a whole full page video ad while you're scrolling through reading the article. You'll like read, you're like, all of a sudden everything freezes, and all of a sudden you get an ad for like some kind of Rogaine or some shit. You're like, what the hell? And it's like the full page too, and you gotta look for the X. You're like, where the hell's the X? Where's the X?
It's because they hide it underneath.
Yeah, or the other web pages where you've got to look to where the video's playing. You have no idea. You loaded the page, you're reading, you're like, why the hell am I hearing an Arby's commercial? What the hell is that? And you scroll down and you scroll down and you scroll down and you look on the right-hand column in a little tiny square, they've got some ad playing. You're like, shit, what the hell, man? All I do is read the freaking article. Jesus.
Or hit the next button you're hovering over and then suddenly the ad goes, Wick! And you click on the ad instead of the next button.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's those, or you've got to watch it, especially where like if you go to get a driver, you got to make sure you're getting it from the actual manufacturer, because if you get it from like some of these third-party places, the button that says download, it's not actually downloading the driver; it's downloading another piece of software altogether, and you're like, what the, dude?
Downloader,
download the damn driver. What the hell? Okay, I'm good now. Get that off.
The only good driver is Donald Driver.
Yes, Donald Driver was awesome. We missed Donald Driver. Woo-hoo. So let's get this started. So you guys ready?
Yeah, yes, sir. Let's do it.
Just winging this one. So
got to do it justice, guys.
Oh. God damn. Wow. We haven't even started officially and you're already with the puns. Here we go. This ought to be interesting. Strap yourselves in, boys. And welcome to another edition of the Spoiler Room. Welcome, my friends, for joining us down here tonight to talk about some superhero films. Yes, it is Super Month. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. Excuse me. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. And yes, we've covered some very unusual films. And part of the thing that kicked off Super Month or made me choose this was because we get two superhero films in this month. We got Thor Ragnarok and we got tonight's movie, which is Justice League. Yes, the latest installment in the DC Cinematic Universe is out. If you couldn't tell on the internet, well, then you may have been blind. But tonight down in the spoiler room, I got a couple of gentlemen here to help talk about this film. First off, we have him, the filmmaker himself. He is back in the spoiler room once again, Mr. Cole Meredith. Hello, Cole. How are you tonight, sir?
Fantastic, man. Let's do this movie some justice. Thanks for having me.
Oh, God. Wow, that's two in like less than a minute. What the hell? You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me. And next to Mr. Meredith is the Bowtie Man himself, Mr. Paul Salzer. Hello, Paul.
Oh, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Got my mustache CGI'd off, just for
God. Here we go. I don't get it. I don't get it. We just dive into. I don't get this. Everybody is talking about the CGI mustache. I watched it a second time last night, and I got so into the movie again. I didn't look for it, but I didn't notice. I'm like, what the hell? I see nothing wrong. Maybe it's because there's so much other CGI, which we will talk about tonight, that I didn't really notice. Or maybe I actually enjoyed the film and quit being a nitpicky bitch.
Yeah.
We'll get back to there in a little bit. Sorry. That's the last trigger I'll have for the evening.
Yeah, right.
Hey, whatever. Tonight, we are talking about 2017 Justice League, directed by Mr. Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon. Yes, folks, it is the latest superhero film. It takes place right after the events, pretty much, or very soon after the events of Batman v Superman, what my oldest calls the worst superhero film, well, it was worst film ever made, just about. My son hated that film, and he reminds me every day for the last year and a half because I enjoyed that film. But so this is a direct sequel to that. It's the latest installment, and it also Wonder Woman took place mostly in the past, so that it's, there's kind of some continuation of events there, but we'll get into that a bit. But first, here, who wants to give the summary of Justice League? Cole or Paul?
Paul, take it away, man.
Go, Paul, right. Go.
Okay, basically the story is, like Mark said, this is happening just slightly after Dawn of Justice, and Batman is basically going through and trying to figure out what his dream was about. He's fighting parademons, and he's discovering this story about the mother boxes, which when joined together will turn the earth into Apocalypse. And that's all done by the big bad of the movie, which is called Steppenwolf. And because this is all happening, they decide they got to get the band together for the first time to help humanity. And then, of course, Batman, being Batman, he's always thinking, he says, we also can use this technology to bring back hope in the form of Superman. So it's just an amazing story.
Some people would agree with you, Paul. Many out there would not.
Would not. Yes. That's because haters are going to hate this movie regardless of what they're going to do. This movie is just going to give them more reasons to hate it. And so who cares? I'm not going to even listen to them. I don't care.
Well, what's interesting about the haters for this film, we'll just dive into it. Folks, we're going to be kind of meandering tonight. But what I hated about the haters of this, what's getting me with this haters is the fact that there's, as much as everybody goes by the Rotten Tomatoes rating and like Metacritic rating, everyone I've talked to, there's a number of people who despise Batman v Superman, who actually go, no, it's not a perfect film or a great film in my eyes, but it's not that bad. There's more people out there now that I've caught on the web who are sitting going, no, I mean, it's not really great, but it's not that bad. Yet there's the people out there saying it's that bad. So it really starts this whole debate, which is also on the schedule of things I hope we could get to talking to tonight, of people talking a little bit about bias. But let's burst into initial reactions. So let's go down the line here. Mr. Cole Meredith, you go first. Well, first off, did you like Batman v Superman, and what did you think of Justice League when the credits rolled?
Well, man, those are both loaded questions. I'm a huge fan of BVS, Batman versus Superman. It's almost become pornographic to say you're a fan of that movie. It's almost like defending the Ghostbusters reboot. It's like you open yourself up for all of this, like, shit. Like, no, hold on. I just like the movie. I didn't say I want to take a dump on everything the comic books stand for. And I didn't say, like, Zack Snyder is a god and all of these things. I just said that I love that movie. I think it's brilliant. Visually, so many of the comic book movies are starting to look the same to me. Like exactly the same, like visually, aside from story, aside from tone, just to sit there and watch them. Batman versus Superman had a whole different feel. I lost count of the amount of times I saw that thing in the theater, probably 6 or 7. I really like that movie. I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I think if your strongest criticism of the portrayal of Batman in that movie is the no-kill rule being broken, then you got problems, man. You got to lighten up. Because that movie gets a lot right. So that's my opinion of BVS. Now, my thoughts when the credits rolled for Justice League, and I swear, get ready for me to do a whole bunch of ass kissing about this movie because I loved it. But when the credits rolled, I thought, wow, man, my only complaint is that and as I thought this is not a joke, my 10-year-old stepson looked up at my fiance and said, wow, that was really short. The thing, it feels abbreviated. It feels like an abbreviated version of a movie that had a lot more to say, and that's evident in the opening credits. I mean, the credits is like, wow, there's Schneider, and then you get a whole lot of, whoa, there's Whedon, then you get, whoa, Schneider, Whedon, and it's all good. But I do get the feeling that there were some scenes that might have gelled the two styles a little bit more that we weren't privy to because of this fucking 2-hour running time. All of that said, man, I love the movie. I've only had a chance to see it once. My fiance promised we're gonna go again. I can't wait. Loved it.
Nice. And just to acknowledge that I started looking a little bit online, and in between all the hate tapes and the hate posts and that, there is some information in there, and it sounds like a lot. What they trimmed out and why it was down to 2 hours, they trimmed out a lot of Snyder. From what it sounds like, there's a number of deleted scenes. I think there's a YouTube video even of it, of deleted scenes that Snyder that cut out, that were in the Snyder cut, if you will.
Gotcha.
I have a feeling they trimmed out a lot of the stuff that Snyder's kind of known for, with, you know, his bit long narrative and many of the things that people complained about in Batman v Superman. You know, so I have a feeling that's why you got the short runtime, but I can see that complaint. Me personally, I didn't mind the 2 hour runtime, because I dug it. I saw it twice already. So yes, folks, if you haven't gathered, and I didn't plan it this way, I have a feeling we haven't gotten Paul's reaction, but if you're looking for the Haters podcast, check out every other Hater podcast. I don't think you may find it here tonight. Just saying.
Word.
If you did see it and you hated it, trust me, I have total respect for your opinion. Just letting you know, this episode is going to be a little bit more positive spin on ye old Justice League. Paul, how about you when the credits rolled? I have a feeling how you felt about this one. And what were just brief thoughts too on Batman v Superman when you saw it?
Well, with Dawn of Justice, Dawn of Justice. I was actually very happy with the film. It wasn't like a really, really high film. I wasn't like totally happy with it, but I enjoyed it. And the part where everybody seemed to really got disappointed with the film, the whole Martha thing, I loved that part. I thought it had this wonderful literature type of thing. It felt like a real comic book to me, and it just had that comic book feel. It continued on in this movie, which is why I do enjoy Justice League. But again, it wasn't quite the movie that I had expected. The one I had going into it, I think I would have just like put Justice League on the top of my list of superhero films, maybe even on top of all of my films, had they made the movie that I had thought that they were going to make. But the movie that I got to watch after the credits started, I was still impressed. I was still happy with it. And I'm going to say the pun again. I felt that it did the characters justice.
And yes, folks, if you haven't gathered, I too enjoyed this film quite a bit when the credits rolled. And the reason why I brought up my son, my eldest son, who my youngest didn't quite care for it. He's about 13. He said it was good trash. So he thought he didn't care for it too much, but he did like a lot of parts in it. He liked a lot more parts in it than Batman v Superman. But he didn't hate on Batman v Superman. My oldest, on the other hand, hates Batman v Superman. And here, after Justice League, he actually really enjoyed it. He got it. It stuck with him. He gave it, I believe, his initial rating was 4 out of 5 stars on it. He enjoyed it quite a bit, though he did agree with a few minor flaws. On the whole, he enjoyed it, which, you know, he's a target demographic. So there you go, folks. I dug it. I dug the energy and seeing the guys, you know, together, the way they fought together, everything really with this film. As far as the story goes, I enjoyed the story. I do agree that it would have been nice to see a little bit more of the ideas fleshed out. But again, I think they trimmed out a lot of Snyder, and they were trying to cut out a little bit more melodrama in here and have an energy to it. I think, and that probably is attributed a bit to Joss Whedon's writing and input into some of this film. Most of it is Snyder, from my understanding, but they did do a lot of reshoots and a lot of rework as far as the script goes, and that was Joss Whedon's work, and you can see his footprint in here. But yeah, for me, sorry, go ahead.
If you take a look at the trailers, though, the scenes that were in the trailer that weren't in the final movie, it still showed that Snyder was going to take it into a much more lighter, more humorous tone still. And so I think a lot of people were overly critical, saying that, oh, it's all the humor was Joss's doing, and it isn't. It really wasn't him. I think he had to cut it based on the higher up saying, you got to make this movie shorter. And because of that, he had to take out a lot of these pieces, and then what he had to put back in was what he called connective tissue.
Right.
And because of that, it was like, because, well, I cut this out and it doesn't make the flow anymore. So now I have to reshoot this scene and put back a little bit of that connectiveness. And I think that's what ended up doing it. So I hope that the haters out there don't think that it was that everything that Schneider had was going to make it like another dark film. I don't believe that it was going to be that way.
No, I'm not saying it was completely dark, but he is known a bit more, at least through the other two films, that there's a little bit heavier melodrama worked into the other two, especially, you know. And the Martha scene from the last one, if you haven't heard our thoughts on it, check out the Batman v Superman episode we did when it came out, back when I was trying to figure out fan bases and went down a rabbit hole that I promised myself I wouldn't go down again. But but with this one, yeah, it didn't quite have the drama, but this sucker really moves. I think I don't think this ever actually drags too much at all. Cole, what do you think with the way this film plays out from start to finish? Did it drag at all for you at any part, or did it feel like it moved pretty well?
No, the thing clips along, man, especially in that first act. I mean, the establishing shots are kept to an absolute minimum. I mean, they really, clip along. Everything begins almost mid-dialogue, mid-scene. They probably lost 15 minutes by just cutting mid-scene for the first hour of this movie. I mean, it was like, it almost seemed like, well, we have to have the stuff that we showed them in a lot of the trailers, but let's keep the introduction to these guys really, really quick, to the point where, and I'm only talking about the first hour. Even like Aquaman's introduction is really like, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen it. I mean, it's really, really quick. But, when the second hour begins, when things get cooking and the team is together, everything gels really good. And I sort of stopped thinking about, studio decisions and reshoots and what was Whedon's and what was Snyder's, and really got into the story. I do think that Paul is right. I think that there was a conscious decision probably within 2 weeks, if not sooner, after BVS opened, to make a shift in the tone. And I'm sure whatever they had planned, a lot of it, went out the window. And so many things got juggled around. I mean, they gave Affleck power for a little bit until his new movie kind of flopped. And they're like, no, we're going to go this direction. And so they're always kind of trying to scramble around, but for the most part, the movie gels. I mean, once you can get back past that opening, that where everything is really, really rushed and the conversations are like really, really clipping along. Like I said to a friend of mine the other day, I'm not saying it's better made than either of the Avengers movie. I'm just going to say I enjoyed it more, for me personally, because once the characters get together, there is more payoff. There is more of a banter that to me felt more grounded in the way people dressed in ridiculous outfits would act. The Pet Sematary jokes are gold, and anyway, I could go on and on and on. But to answer your question, I think the pacing was great. I really do. I think the first hour is abbreviated as hell, but man, I enjoyed this film. It's as my friend Scott said, it's breezy. I mean, it really is hard to kind of get angry about anything happening on screen, because it's so breezy. It's like reading a really good, fast-paced comic book. You know,
it is. It really has more of a comic book feel than I'll say the previous two films, the installments in this. You know, Wonder Woman, we're talking about previous installments as far as Man and Steel and Batman v Superman. Wonder Woman took place almost entirely in the past and was her solo film, so it doesn't work too much into this. So that's why, folks, we won't be talking about too much. But Man of Steel and especially Batman v Superman play directly into Justice League, which is why we mentioned those two. But and we'll probably mention those two the most tonight. But yeah, I agree that this is the most comic book feeling of the films of the three in this main story arc. What about you, Paul?
I would agree with that. Yes, just on the visuals, the dialogue, and the pacing, it was very much comical. Like I said earlier, I think that this continued the trend with Batman v Superman, and that's what I was looking for in this comic, or in this type of movie, and they delivered. So yeah.
It almost felt too like they were kind of trying to make up for some of the things that they realized they may have stumbled with in Batman v Superman, because Batman in this has got his tail tucked between his legs and his ears down, and he's like, oh yeah, I was dumb. I was so dumb.
It gave me a sense that Bruce was human. Because I don't think people really sat and thought about Batman as the Batman of this universe. Everyone was comparing him to the Batman that they were used to, especially the Christian Bale Batman, who was kind of young, vibrant, and getting things going. This is the Batman at the end of his career, where he's nearly lost everyone, and he started to get cynical about his job and his duty. And then, so all the stuff that happened in Batman v Superman sort of reflected that. And then suddenly at the end, when Superman does this heroic thing, he realizes that he realizes what it meant to be a hero again. And so he was trying to redeem himself in this movie, which is why I think, you know, everyone's like, oh no, he phoned it in, you know, Ben Affleck. I don't think so. I think he was that portrayal was very much like, this is a guy that is really trying to redeem himself and trying to get back to the Batman that he used to be, not the Batman that everyone expected him to already have been, you know?
Yeah, and Wonder Woman sees that as well. We get that scene in the dock where they talk about how they have the one of the mother boxes. Like I said, folks, we're jumping around a little bit tonight, but basically Cyborg knows where one of the mother boxes is that Steppenwolf is looking for, and he already got two, and they discover the power of the mother boxes, specifically the one that Cyborg was hiding or helping where he knew where it was. And so Batman gets the idea of bringing Superman back. And we got a great scene in here, some seriousness to it. It's not all jokes, where Wonder Woman calls him on it going, yeah, this is kind of dangerous, and we don't need to do this just so you could get over your guilt. I'm like, oh, damn, but so there's that great scene. But yeah, it's Batman here. We get trying to assemble the team under guilt and looking for redemption in this. This is a bit about him trying to get some redemption. He blames himself for the death of Superman in many ways, doesn't he, Cole?
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Excuse me. He absolutely does. And, I think that the subtext there is that he blames himself for a lot of the other things we saw him do in the last movie as well. Mm-hmm. I don't think we entered that story with Batman being as heroic as I guess most fans expected him to be. And to me, that was fine. To me, seeing a Batman on the very, very verge of almost Punisher-esque lunacy was a blast.
Yeah.
But, I guess people got pissed off about that, and I've tried to talk to those people. I literally have, because I think everybody has an opinion. And if you want to hate a movie with all of your heart till you're old and gray, that's fine. I'm just always curious, like, wow, what gives you that drive to hate it that much? But I think he needed to be that way at the beginning to balance off with Superman and to also kind of give them a place to fight. So, as you said, the movie begins with him being extremely apologetic and probably more so than he was when the concept was initially drafted out,
Right.
just to sort of course correct and apologize in a way, which is fine. But I think the way Affleck plays it is fantastic. Some people have described his performance here as muted. But really, I think all of the characters are a little muted because they don't really all have the screen time to kind of expand out and branch out. So you're left with getting sort of nuances via one-liners and brief glimpses. And
Right.
Cyborg actually got a lot. I thought I was surprised.
See, and that's what I was
I
going
mean, really.
to bring up to you guys is because we're introducing 3 new characters basically into this film. And a lot of the criticism out there has been, the character depth. Oh, we don't get a lot of character depth and setup, but we get enough to understand why these people are being called upon where they are. But Cyborg was my favorite actually while Affleck wasn't my first one, I really enjoyed his Batman portrayal. I totally dug Cyborg. And then Cyborg's played by Ray Fisher, and there's people that were saying, oh, he gets shortchanged in that. I don't think so. We get to explore him, I think, the most. Would you agree, Paul, or disagree that Cyborg, out of the new characters, he's definitely one that gets the most exploration and you could say depth?
I would agree on just the depth part of it, but I do believe that a lot of all the characters had a great deal of screen time. But you're right. I mean, they explored his character more because let's face it. I mean, his technology is somewhat based on the technology of the mother boxes. He was basically, pieced together by that. At least in that's what they're hinting at. If you follow the Justice League New 52 comics, there's a little bit more to that, and I don't know if they're going to expand on that, which I hope they do. But yeah, I think it was needed because he had that link. It made sense that he would be doing the things like why would the Flash suddenly know how to interface with a mother box and separate them? It just made a lot of sense, and that's why I think they did a really good job with giving his character that role. I don't think they made a mistake there.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And like I said, Ray Fisher nails this part.
Yes,
I so want a Cyborg movie so bad now. After seeing, give the man his own film, man, because I loved him. Cole, how about you? I know you mentioned it with these guys, but with Cyborg especially, would you say he got like the most depth? And did you like that he got the most depth? Because Flash and Aquaman, you established them. You don't need a whole lot, at least, to understand them, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Honestly, although I wish Aquaman and Flash had gotten more, that doesn't take away the fact that I love what they did with Cyborg, and the scenes he got were great. I love Joe Morton. I've loved Joe Morton ever since Terminator 2. His death scene in that is just phenomenal. Just goes to show you what you can, if you're a good enough actor, you can make gold out of anything. And his death in Terminator 2 is just fan. But I like seeing him in a couple scenes. I'm sure he had more. If we get an extended cut, I'm sure there'll be more. But as you said, Ray Fisher, fantastic, and how he handles it well. It can't be easy, to be the darkest character in a group that also has Batman in it.
Right.
I mean, he's got a lot to sort of juggle there. And yeah, I just like the way they handled the character. That said, it is the character out of everybody in this movie, including Lex Luthor. It's the character I know the least about. If I own a single comic with Cyborg in it. So, I mean, maybe that's why I love it so much. Maybe if I knew more about the character, I'd be like, oh, fuck this or something. But I doubt it. I think it's well done.
Yeah, I think that's why they worked it as well as with having him out of the three new characters, we spend you would say out of the three characters you spend the most time with his backstory, I think. Exploring his origins in that.
Yeah, but they hint at the other ones. They don't just throw it out there like they did with Cyborg, because with Aquaman they had that subtext about he's not getting along with his mother. And the whole idea of is he truly the king of Atlantis yet, or is it going to be his brother? And so there's all of that story that is there just because all they had to do was show like an empty throne, and that showed that the fact that he was drinking a lot, that he spent more time on the land than that he felt like he was disconnected from the sea as well as the land, that had a whole bunch of backstory implications. But they didn't just throw it out there. And with the Flash, Barry Allen, the whole context of just that one brief scene about his father, talking with his father, the guilt, and having his father want to have him stand out more, that he didn't want Barry to be standing in one place because he felt that he was bringing his son down. All this stuff was stuff that just was like between the lines, and I think a lot of people are just going to miss that, and they're going to say, well, these characters are not developed. And yes, they are, if you truly want to dig into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and some people say, well, that makes it a fan movie. I'm like, I took the movie by itself, and I'm like, they gave these characters enough introduction for you to understand why they're a badass, why Aquaman's a badass, why Flash is, why he is, and Cyborg's definitely a badass in here, though he does have the heaviest story out of the three, because he is directly tied to the Mother Box, which is being sought after by Steppenwolf. The villain Steppenwolf, we'll talk about him for a little bit, and then we'll get to what happened in the film later on, after we get introduced to all three of the films and we see how Batman tries to pull them together. Steppenwolf, people have complained about this villain as well. One of their complaints was, that he wasn't that developed. But I'm like, have you watched a Marvel movie? Like, I thought, he's a guy who wants revenge and wants to turn the world into his own world. I didn't think you needed much more depth or motivation.
There is more to that, though. There is. He's like a descendant of Darkseid, but that aside, his entire motivation was to get back to Apocalypse, to prove to himself, and that's why he said, hail Darkseid. He was doing this for Darkseid, and he really wanted to get back home, and he knew that unless his mission succeeded, he wouldn't be able to do that. And there's that one scene where they talk about him, the first time he lost, how unbelievably crushed he was, to the fact that he basically went away until the Mother Box finally decided to call him back when the time was right.
Right.
That's backstory that people don't, or the development of the character that people just totally ignore. It's there.
It is there. I think it's just because it moves by so quickly.
Exactly.
And the story of Steppenwolf does get a little bit of the CGI fest in here, which I thought was cool, though. Atlanteans, Amazons, and the Tribes of Men all fighting together, and you get gods in there as well, and even an appearance of Green Lantern, not the Green Lantern, but a Green Lantern, which I thought was a nice little nod there in that flashback, where when we get the Steppenwolf story, the first time he tried to have the Mother Box take out Earth. Cole, what'd you think of this flashback scene that they had, where we get to see the first battle that ever happened with Steppenwolf?
It was fantastic. In fact, we went to an early 2D show. We're in the middle of moving the studio. In fact, as I'm talking to you guys right now, I'm surrounded by boxes, literally. So if you hear anything fall, it's just me knocking over a box. But during that scene, I thought, man, you know what? We should have just gone ahead and ponied up and gone to the IMAX 3D, because it's really, for a little, snippet, it's an incredible scene, visually. I love that. I love seeing, a Green Lantern. As he said, I was, right away. I was like, holy shit, there he is. It's not Ryan Reynolds, but there he is.
It's okay. I don't think it'll ever be Ryan Reynolds again. But what'd you think of Steppenwolf too? How they developed him for a villain in a superhero film? Because let's face it, out of all the superhero films, and I am saying Marvel too, and people don't throw food at me because that's been the same complaint even of Marvel fans, is the villains always seem to be a little bit one note. What'd you think of Steppenwolf in here? Do you think he was adequate enough for the Justice League?
Well, visually, yeah. I mean, everybody's getting down on the way he looks in the CGI, and I thought that was all great. But I would say I see a lot of what Paul is saying, but I do think that a lot of this does have the feeling, and I'm saying this as somebody who loves the movie. Like, I'm going again tomorrow or Wednesday, like as soon as I can. We're trying to work it into our schedule, but this does have the feeling of a movie where there are just chunks missing. Like there is just something, and I've had this feeling before, and it usually turns out to be the case. I mean, not that I'm comparing this to, any of these other movies, but Fantastic Four had that same feeling. Like you just get the feeling, well, wow, that's abrupt. And now we're over here. Wait, well, that's weird.
That's Fantastic Four, though. There's a whole
different I'm just saying,
for this.
I know absolutely, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some great stuff, including Steppenwolf. I mean, if you cut 20 minutes out of a movie with this budget, some of it's going to be special effects. Right. Some of it's not just going to be all dramatic filler. I mean, such as the one scene that gets me is just a brief tangent when Superman's mother sees him and she runs over and hugs him and they just cut away. I mean, that's not a criticism because you would do that in a comic. That would be enough dramatic impact. I'm just saying in a movie like this, it's weird. And I'm not saying there's a scene out there that exists. Right. There are lots of cuts like that are just bam. And Steppenwolf particularly, it does seem like, okay, who is this guy again? Like, if I haven't read the comics, and I pay attention to subtext, I do. I watch every little thing as many different times from as many different angles as I can. But with Steppenwolf, if I had a complaint, it wouldn't be the way he looks, the way he talks. I think all that, works as good as a completely CGI character can, unless you're Andy Serkis. But my complaint would more be that there's, he needs more meat behind him. So we can understand him, so we can sort of get into him. It's almost like you couldn't introduce Superman the way he was introduced in this movie, right? You couldn't just introduce a character in the last act and have the audience engaged for the most part. You needed to know Superman prior to that. And Steppenwolf, I don't know, he just kind of drops in here.
Yeah, for me, I thought he was adequate, but I can see the complaints. But you could say that about a number of different superhero villains as well. I mean, a few of those, like in Thor, Thor Dark World, I thought the villains there is like, while Steppenwolf does seem to get a little bit shortchanged in this, I still thought he was all right. I thought he was fine for the film and the runtime and what they had to cover. I'm like, yeah, okay, he's a guy that wants to destroy the world. Justice League's got to stop him. That's all I really need to know. Me personally, Yeah, no,
absolutely. I think it's funny how everybody's like, gosh, 2 hours, you're not even going to be able to develop the heroes. And I think, gosh, you're not even skimming the surface. Is that all you're worried about? What about Lois Lane? What about Steppenwolf? What about all these other people? Like, if a movie's going to be 2 hours, you're just going to have to know going in. It's not going to be as Shakespearean as the Hulk movie that everybody hated. Remember? They've tried to do that, guys, and you guys all hated it. Anyways. Yeah. But I totally agree. I agree with you guys. I have to say, as somebody who's being totally analytical about a movie that he loves, it does feel like there was a meat cleaver in here that was just like chunk gone. I did
like, though, how we got a little bit more establishment, at least explanation of the parademons, who, when they showed up in Batman v Superman, unless you read the comics at all, you had absolutely no clue who those guys were. And we get that opening first chunk where we see Batman again, and he uses the thief as bait for a parademon. And I love that whole sequence. What I also enjoyed, though, was the fact that we get in this film, I think, with Justice League, we get more of our detective Batman. Wouldn't you say, Paul? I mean, for the amount of time he gets on screen, he seems he's doing a bit more of his detective works, almost like the original Batman in '89.
That's very correct. Yes, you see it in the fact that he was able to use Lex Luthor's notes to figure out how the parademons work, which again establishes that bookend ending. It comes into play later on in the movie, which I loved. And then you see it also again when he figures out that he could use the mother box to basically restore hope, restore Superman. And then you also see him kind of using that whole idea where he pieces together. And I don't know if this was intentional or something, but this is what I got out of the scene with Batman v Superman, the whole scene of him getting warned by the Flash.
Right.
To me, it was to establish how to get Superman from actually going bat beep crazy, and to turn him back. So he figured that out, and that is the Batman that you expect. It's the detective. It's the guy that, they joke about what is his superpower. He's rich. And that's truly a joke. His superpower isn't that he's rich. It helps. His superpower is that he's supposed to be one of the greatest thinkers in that world, and he figures things out. And so, yeah, this, like you said, this movie shows it more than the other ones did, and I appreciate that. I think that is a good call on the movie makers.
Yeah, and he's recognizing not only that with the Batman character, but he's recognizing his age. You get that scene again. Him and Wonder Woman get some great scenes. Him and Gal Gadot, I thought, did really well in the scenes where it's just those two. Where I don't think people are talking about, are they playing up a romantic angle? I don't think so. I think they're just playing up as two people who, are in this situation, and she's kind of, reality checking Batman sometimes. Cole, what do you think of the scenes that we get with Batman and Wonder Woman, especially like later on in the film where he's all beat to hell after Superman? Yes, spoiler, Superman comes back and he's all beat to hell. And then you get the scene too where they're talking about, Steve Trevor and that. How'd you feel about those scenes with those two?
All of that was fantastic, and I'm glad somebody brought it up, because those two are my favorite parts of the movie. Those two characters, I think their chemistry is great, and it's there. I mean, the fact that I'm calling their chemistry is great is kind of silly, because chemistry is just, either it's there or it isn't. I was just watching the Marvel series, The Punisher, and it was painful to me because Micro and The Punisher, both played by fantastic actors. There's just nothing there. And because of that, I automatically tuned out. It's just so nice to have actors who really are experienced, who know their craft, who can sort of milk these characters. I mean, spoiler room, that scene where she punches them is great. The whole theater was about on their feet laughing, I think the references to her the love of her life are great, and it shows how invested I am in this universe, because I remember all of that. I remember everything back to Man of Steel, even though I guess these movies, they haven't been as successful as their competition. It just seems like the stories are just so pronounced and so rich. And Batman and Wonder Woman especially, man. I really hope I get at least one more movie with both of those lead performers in those roles because they're really fucking good at it.
They are quite a bit. I mean, even when she first shows up, you get just the little banter, where she showed up at the Batcave and he's like, I spent millions of dollars on the best security, that the world had. She goes, yeah, it looked expensive, but it wasn't done in like a forced way. This felt like two people who really had been through some shit, and they could do that with each other. They can kid, but there's that history there between them. But I'm also glad though I didn't really feel any too much of a romantical thing like you might expect. I mean,
no, they seemed like peers.
Yeah.
This is like if I'm working alongside an actress or something. You just, the comedy came from the characters. The comedy didn't seem to come from imposed, needed comedic beats.
Right.
Like sometimes I get that feeling, and this isn't a Marvel versus DC thing, but sometimes I get that feeling like, okay, Thor needs to say something funny here. Okay, we need to do something over here and a little splash here. And this felt more like the comedy was really coming from the way these people might joke around,
Yeah. And everybody gets their one-liners. I mean, like I said, Wonder Woman gets the security, line and one or two other lines throughout the film. And then there's the Flash, who I really enjoyed in this. He gets a lot of comical moments, but he's the youngest of the group. And I think, people were kind of about the Flash. I'm like, we're catching him literally just exploring his powers. I mean,
yes,
he's still kind of fresh to it, though. He did drop the line that he knew gorilla sign language, which I love. I love the little nod to Grodd with that mention. Though he hadn't probably fought him yet, it's just the fact that he mentions gorilla sign language. Paul, did you get the feel that the Flash here is still really just trying to feel himself out, isn't he?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of room for development, and you could tell by his insecurities. And it was great that there was one scene where Batman got to mentor him and basically said, go in there, grab one hostage. And he was like,
that is such a good scene.
That was so profound for him. And that would be something that you would expect Batman to tell the Flash, hey, just grab one. And then Batman, being Batman, knew that the Flash would somehow realize that, hey, I can do it again.
Yeah.
And again, and again, and again, and again. And then he was able to start going from that aspect, that was the, and again, people are saying that the characters aren't developed. No, that shows you have to read between those lines that you had this hero that just started out. And that's why out of all of the other heroes that they were picking, he was like, yeah, you had me at the beginning right there. Yes, I'm on board. And his reason, he doesn't have many friends. So he just wanted to hang out with the guys.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect.
And he's not the only one. We're just discovering their powers. Cyborg is too. He's still trying to get acquainted with his new body. I mean, we get that same scene. There's so much in that scene when the Justice League first meets up with Steppenwolf, who had kidnapped the Star Lab people, including Cyborg's dad, in this scene. And you get that scene where Batman mentors him, and then Cyborg, his body just goes into action and takes a wicked shot at Steppenwolf. But, he's still discovering what his body can do.
It changes every night, too, because it keeps rewriting.
Right. It keeps rewriting, himself. So you got two characters in here just discovering their powers. So no, they're not going to be, like full-fledged into superhero dumb, but they do damn good just with their discovery, I mean, you get that great, that whole scene in the power plant there is great where they meet Steppenwolf, because they all get their moment to shine, and Wonder Woman still the best. Oh my God. I love Wonder Woman so much, and she gets that wicked battle with Steppenwolf, and Flash gets to help her out. And then, Batman helps Flash out. And then, I mean, you look at the way they interact with each other and they're helping each other out. I guess that's part of the thing that I enjoy about this film is that throughout this movie, you never get it that it's just one guy. Even when Soups, after he gets resurrected, and he's part of it, everybody gets something to do. And it felt like everybody got, a role to play and they got to show up, but they also got to work with each other. There never was once where I felt like, oh, this is the Batman show or this is the Wonder Woman or Superman show. Paul, would you agree? Would you agree with that they do that in this film fairly well?
Fairly well, except for the beginning scene with the bank and Wonder Woman. That pretty much felt like Wonder Woman. But I was okay with that because I was excited to watch another scene with her and just show that just how powerful of a character and a superhero she is. It was the fact that she could like deflect all of the bullets amazingly, and then doing the smart thing, which was to get the bomb out of there. It was a wonderful show of how her character is such a wonderful hero and it shows you needed that scene to show and to prove that she out of everyone has the most established, she understands what it means to be a hero more than any of the other ones, even though she took this kind of weird backstep to not be in the light.
Right.
But it was like that. She had the experience that she was a believable leader. So when she took on the role of essentially leading the group, it was believable that she should be able to do it. And I love that.
Yeah, I think the introduction with Wonder Woman, I think they did that as a part just in case people didn't happen to see the Wonder Woman movie.
Oh, yeah.
If you had seen Batman v Superman, but not the Wonder Woman movie, and you took, you got that she was a badass at the end of Batman v Superman, don't get me wrong, but to see her in real action like that, and if you hadn't happened to see the Wonder Woman film, I think this scene was helped to just remind you of, she's so badass, And so I think that's why they did that with her scene in here, is because of that, just to reestablish her. At least that's the feeling that I got with it.
That's a good call. That's a good call.
Would you say that maybe that's why we get a little bit more of that introduction with Wonder Woman than maybe expected, since she already had her solo film?
Boy, I don't know. I was so into what Paul was saying there. Paul, it's so nice to hear somebody who loves the movie so much and knows so much about it. Because I'm serious. I love this movie and don't understand most of the criticisms, 99% of the criticism. But yeah, Mark, I would say, I guess, I don't know. Here's the thing: like Wonder Woman as a movie, is phenomenal. I mean, it's fantastic. And a buddy of mine asked me the other day, he's like, look, my daughter hasn't seen Batman versus Superman. She hasn't seen Man of Steel. Can we see Justice League? Will she be able to follow it? And my immediate response, and this is on my page, is I said, well, she has to see Wonder Woman. She's seen Wonder Woman, then see this. And he said, oh, she's seen Wonder Woman. I said, well, then go for sure. So I don't know. I would say still see Wonder Woman before seeing this for sure, regardless of her kick-ass introduction, which I love. Again, I wish we'd gone 3D, but it's really a good scene. Yeah, it's hard for me to add to what Paul said because he said it so well.
So yeah, the Batman eventually gets the band together. They have their first intro to Steppenwolf, and they get their asses handed to them. I'm glad there was conflict in the group, but it didn't last too long, because I think the problem I have sometimes with conflict within your superhero group, and I know, Paul, you always love your superheroes to be,
heroic,
good and heroic. I'm glad they had some conflict, but it didn't feel like they were completely giving up on each other. Like you could possibly expect. I'll say it, from a Snyder film, given the tone of the first two films. Tell me, Paul, that given the tone of the first two films, couldn't you see it easily be oh, we got our asses kicked, we're breaking up, goodbye, and then they have to fight again to have people come
Get
together.
back together. Yeah, that's true. That could very easily have been the original idea.
But that scene in there, where they're talking, and that's where you get Wonder Woman pushing Bruce, because Bruce sat there and goes, yeah, he takes that dig at Steve Trevor.
He deserved it then.
And I know he deserved that totally. It was an ass line. But I think Batman 2 in that scene saw that the group was just about going to start, well, maybe not. He goes, hey, let's bring Superman back. And, and the fact that, they're trying to reason with him going, maybe not. And then Cyborg's the voice of reason. But I loved how they're like, you know what? No. And, I thought Flash put it best. The Pet Cemetery line.
Yes. But Batman there showed a little bit of a development there where he flipped his line from Batman v Superman about the whole idea of that 1% chance thing.
Yeah.
He kind of flips that on its end. It was like, oh my goodness, they actually did something that was cool, literally, literarily, not literally, but using literature, and they wrote something that was really cool, that they took the character and flipped it. I loved it.
Well, yeah, they actually gave Batman a little growth in his arc.
Yes.
You don't necessarily get, even in the Nolan films, you don't get a huge arc with him like you do there, which, like you said, that is a 180 from the first film.
Yep.
But it makes you wonder if part of it was he feels so bad about the death of Superman that even if Superman comes back, which he does, a little pissed off and wants to take it out on Batman, it almost is like, yeah, if he kills me, I'm actually fine with that. Cole, did you get that feeling with Batman?
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of that is there. Absolutely. I think.
Well, yeah, because
all I can say is I agree with you.
No, I just
totally, man. It's hard for me to add to what you just said. You said it so well. I mean, he feels guilty. I think Alfred hinted in Batman versus Superman that, in no such words, but you're on a bit of a suicide mission, sir.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think he's still drinking here, right?
Yeah, not
this is
heavily.
In Nolan's films, Bale is drinking this fermented green spirulina type shit. Here, this Batman's drinking whiskey. So I think he's very much the same as everything you just said. The only thing I would add is, God damn it, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of it. Because it's that version of it's going to go away probably sooner than later, and we never really got to explore it in his own movie. This really burned out, borderline murderous, psychopathic Batman that we probably won't see again for another 20 years. That they actually did pretty good. It's just he's not getting a lot of time to develop.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing, because we get that scene. They do revive Superman with the help of the one mother box that hadn't been taken by Steppenwolf, because he pretty much, the Amazons put up a hell of a fight. The Atlanteans pretty much got their asses handed to them pretty quickly. Though Aquaman does get a few licks in on Steppenwolf, and
Mira does a good job too.
And Mira does a good job as well. But we get the final box, and they know it could trigger Steppenwolf coming out, but they got to revive Superman. And they even gave a few people, in that scene, everybody kind of something to do, because the Flash uses his electrical charge to start the box. And so he revives Superman, which is just a great scene. And then they all got to fight Superman, because Superman's not sure exactly where he is, and he's feeling kind of like a dick. And he decides, all you guys want to attack me, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. I loved that scene so much. And, where they're all fighting him, because they show you who is the strongest out of the group. I mean, you get that scene where Cyborg freezes him.
Yep.
because his body automatically goes into a defense mode and he can't quite control it. So he freezes them. And then you get this scene where they all try to hit Superman and he stops them all. I mean, this whole sequence is awesome. And then Batman shows up and he's actually a little winded from the ship. Did you catch that?
Yes.
Like, shit.
Get too old for this.
The metahumans didn't take care of him. God, crap. And bring out the big guns. I loved this whole sequence.
What did you think of just Superman's eyes as the Flash is running by, thinking, "I'm just going to run by him really quick, and he won't." And then just having Superman's eyes just turn, and you could see the Flash's face going, "Oh crap!"
Well, yeah, and actually the audience laughs at that too, because he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this," and Superman's like, he's got everybody held tight, like no one's hurting him, and he looks and he goes, "Oh hi." And then he and Soup get into it, which was a kind of a fun battle. And he and Wonder Woman. I mean, I loved the fact that they actually had him fighting the League a bit, just because I was glad he didn't come back too all happy and right in the brain.
Yeah,
because you needed that showdown then as these metahumans are trying to take on Superman. Batman shows up and this doesn't go quite like Batman v Superman, does it, Cole?
No, not at all. Not at all, man. That sequence is fantastic. I'm sorry, did you have a question, Mark?
No, I was just wondering, the way they handled that. How you thought the fight was as well, and did you like the idea that they had him fighting the Justice League basically?
Absolutely. That's a scene I didn't. Me, like all fans, although I managed to avoid 2 trailers, I only watched one. I'm so proud of myself. I managed to save so much. But like all fans, like if you see a picture, you just examine it for shit. What's here? What's in that little corner? What can I see? And that shot that emerged fairly late in the game with Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, and all those, just 4 of them standing in front of the bank standing there without Batman. Right. You're like, well, where's Batman and where's Superman? What's going on? It just, so it was great to see that that was during a scene where they're all fighting Superman, which just goes to show you, I don't know who wrote what. I'm like anybody else. I'm just going to this thing and paying my money and watching it, and hopefully it lives up to the comic books for me, which this one did. But you got to give it to somebody who came up with a lot of those gags, because it's not a scene I would have thought of. Mm-hmm. If I was to sit down and write Justice League, I first of all, my movie wouldn't be as awesome as this one, but that's also a scene I just wouldn't have thought of, and that's a really good idea. Mm-hmm. And as Paul said, the moment where Superman's eyes roll over and he sees Flash, that's probably, come on. Is there a better movie, and is there a better moment in any movie this year? I mean, that's great.
Yeah, the audience who I was with the second time I saw it, the first time they all got it right away. The second time is a little bit, but even then, the audience that was there, they chuckled at that as well. Just the way Cavill looks out of the corner of his eye, just and a little smirk, like, yeah, no, I see you, dude. And then he flies over and he grabs Batman, and they have that exchange of dialogue again from the first one.
Yep. Only it's flipped.
Only it's flipped around.
Yep.
And that's where they pull the big guns out with Lois Lane, which actually circles around back to the very opening scene, which we didn't talk about, where we got Superman being interviewed by some really young kids for their podcast, which is an adorable scene. Yeah. And they ask him, what's the best thing about planet Earth, I think. And he stops and he thinks, and you're like, he's thinking of Lois. And so now halfway through the film, or a little over, here, Batman knows what the big gun is to pull out in case Superman kind of goes wacko, which he does.
Yes.
He brings out Lois Lane. And so Superman's like, oh, I'm not. I love how he tossed Batman. He hold him by his chin.
Like a Kleenex.
He held him like by his chin, and all of a sudden he pulls out Lois Lane. He's like, oh, and he just tosses Batman aside. And it's even off screen. All you hear is just kind of the thud. You hear the little ripple of the cape as he flies through the air. Then thud, and then Superman flies off, and then they have that great scene in Kansas.
Yeah.
But Batman gets one of the best lines in the film, which is also, I swear, is the filmmaker, the director, and that maybe having a little fun with those who may have not liked Batman v Superman, was the fact that Superman is holding Batman. And he goes, was it, "Do you bleed?"
Yeah.
And then he tosses him aside. Then after Superman flies off with Lois Lane, Batman's trying to get up. He's like, "Yeah, something's definitely bleeding."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah,
That is the greatest thing ever, man.
it was a
I
great
swear.
line. It was a great line. It fit. It didn't feel forced, and it also felt like it was just a little bit of a wink to those who may not have liked Batman v Superman. In many ways, I mean, there's a lot. With just that one line, I think there was a lot there that showed you kind of where this movie is actually at. If you hadn't gotten it up to that point,
there was another part of the exchange that I really liked was when Superman basically accuses Batman of basically not letting him live and not letting him die.
Yeah.
That was like an amazing line. It was like, holy crap, that's true. If somebody brought me back to life like that, I would be like, you.
Yeah, well, especially considering how they went out, they were still not on the best of terms. I mean, they kind of put their differences aside so they could fight, Doomsday. So he flies there, and then they group. They use Cyborg uses his knowledge to find out where Steppenwolf, because while they were fighting, Steppenwolf grabs the last mother box, which I thought was a great. Kind of a great little touch that we don't even get a battle or anything again for the mother box. It's off screen because they're so busy dealing with Superman that they kind of left the mother box just crashed into a car, and someone took it, and like, shit.
Do you think if they hadn't have woken up the mother box like they did to bring back Superman, that they could have, in theory, hide it so well that Steppenwolf would never have found it?
They could have, but Steppenwolf would have still
eventually gotten it.
He would have destroyed so much.
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, they established enough that he would do anything. He kidnapped the scientists and that. He would do anything to get that last box, which was buried by some guys who got lost from the Lord of the Rings set.
Thank you.
Did they, when they did the flashback?
Yes.
Kinds of humans burying the box? I'm like, holy shit, that's like the king that had the ring. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what?
One box to rule them all.
Right? One box to rule them all. I saw that. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, they're traveling to the Lord of the Rings, and never mind, we have, Cyborg's dad, who is just the twin brother of Miles Dyson. So there you can link Terminator to Cyborg. There you go. I made up this
once again using technology that he shouldn't have been using to screw up our future.
Right? I totally wrote in my head a little story that connected the Justice League movie to Terminator. Terminator 2. With Miles Dyson. I'm like, they're actually brothers, and the one brother took their mom's name and he took his dad's name, and they're actually twin brothers. They're both scientists and they both work with cyborgs. This could work. This could really work. So Soups is back. He gets a little hang time with Lois Lane in the house. It's kind of implied maybe what happened there. She helped bring him back from the dead in more ways than one. No. He's all back, and the group decide to go for the last act here, which is a huge CGI fest. And it is one complaint I will say that I agree with some of the critics, is that a lot of the CGI seemed rough, but you could say that about 90% of the superhero films in the last few years, the CGI was rough. Cole, what'd you think of this last act battle where they fly the Batjet in 3 hours to Russia, and there's just a lot of CGI? What'd you feel? How'd you feel about this last act?
It was fine, man. I mean, CGI and big epic battles at the end, and it's hard for me to get into because I've seen it so many times. I'm trying to think of the last time I was really engaged by something like that, and it might be the first Avengers film, and that's yet a lot going on there, yet a lot going on there.
Yeah, but
also made by Mr. Whedon, but this one doesn't seem quite so overblown. It's a little bit more intimate. They develop the rescue of that the little family, which is humorous and fun. I like that. And the banter between the Flash and Superman, which also, I mean, this is the spoiler room, which also carries through into a little teaser at the end there, all of which is great. I love the last act. When I think of the end of Justice League, like the end battle, I don't think of like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bunch of just CGI nonsense, and they felt the need to kill a character needlessly. Like, what was that? The second Avengers.
Yeah,
just
Age of Ultron. Screw Age of Ultron.
Yeah, let's just try. Let's just the whole kitchen sink. And this, it felt a little bit more focused, and it felt realistic, and I felt like the characters all got their due without having to do anything completely spectacular with each moment.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody got down on Suicide Squad because, the Boomerang never really made use of his boomerang. And it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. I kind of like that.
Yeah, it made for one of the funnier moments in that film, that's for sure.
But anyways, no, I really like the ending of this. As I said earlier, most of my complaints are with the abbreviated first hour and the abbreviated nature of the movie in general. But this ending, I thought, was great. And then I'm glad after the first end credits little blip there, I'm like, we have to go, guys. There's not going to be another one. They're like, no, there is. And I'm glad I stayed for the second one, which is at the very end. So.
Yes, where they set it up pretty much for Justice League 2, which I sure hope there is one.
I sure hope. I have some serious doubts. The box office is not looking good, but I hope so.
I hope so too. But yeah, I enjoyed this third act. It's one of those things where this third act, I actually enjoyed the interaction among the characters more than I did in the Avengers. I know.
Yes!
And don't get me wrong, I loved the Avengers. If you ever caught my review, I loved the Avengers. The first one, Age of Ultron, I don't care about. That was setup film 2.0. No, Avengers, the first one, I really loved. Okay. I will say that this, as far as the interaction and giving all the characters something to do in the big fight, they worked together more. They kept them together more, I think, in this one than in the Avengers, where they kind of were paired off more. And it was just it's just the way the story goes. But it's what I wanted. This was the battle I wanted from the Justice League, and we got it. Paul, how'd you feel about this third act? Did you think the interaction with the characters really kind of maybe edged this a little bit more over some other superhero films where we've seen the grouping, if you will, fight?
Yeah, it felt like they were a team, which was
Oh, you cut out there, Paul, for a minute. We lost you, Paul. Cole?
Yes, sir.
Paul, we lost you, buddy. We lost Paul. Oh no, we lost Paul.
What happened to him?
I don't know.
Shit. Huh.
We can't hear him at all.
Take your time, man.
He lagged right out. Uh-oh. Did he lose internet altogether? Oh no. Steppenwolf got him. We're the three mother boxes. He got one.
Oh, there he is. He's typed something.
He's going to come back in.
Okay.
Or he's one of the mother boxes that just got kidnapped by Steppenwolf, and Steppenwolf's coming for you. Let's see. Would that make Paul the Amazonian mother box? Would that make?
How about that fight with the Amazonian women though for the box and Steppenwolf? That was awesome.
Oh, sure. We can fly back a bit before we talk about the third act. Sure. Yeah. That fight with Steppenwolf.
I didn't know we were live. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, that fly back.
Live.
We're always live, man.
Yeah.
But so we'll take a step back. I'll cut this Chuck out, but I'll get your guys'. You each can bring up one thing that we haven't maybe talked about, and Cole, you can bring up the Amazon fight if you like. So I just want to get Paul's reaction though with the third act, though.
Where did I cut out?
Interaction. You cut out just before you even started.
Oh wow!
In on it. So
yeah, man.
So let's fly this again. So Paul, how'd you feel about this third act and the interaction with the characters? Do you think it moved it the edge above a bit of some of the other superhero films?
Definitely. They felt like a team, and they fought as a team, and they basically fought Steppenwolf as a team. I mean, you got Superman using his freeze breath for, it was really cool to see, and then have Wonder Woman come in and kind of basically shatter his arm. It just felt like they were fighting as a team. And also too, that third act gave me the Superman that I so dearly wanted, Oh my God.
I'm not a big Superman fan, but man, did he kick some ass in that scene.
Oh my God. And it was so great. And then he also had this bit of humor about him too, where the scene that Cole was talking about with the Flash and Superman. Superman goes off in one direction, the Flash goes and helps that family by pushing it, and you think, oh yeah, the Flash did something heroic. And then off in the distance, you see Superman carrying an entire building to safety. That was so humorous. That's so Superman too. And then he was cheerful too. It just seemed like he was there and he was willing to help. He wasn't like brooding over anything, or he didn't carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. And that's what the third act really did for me. And like you said, it was all this team effort because it felt like the team was coming together. And that was also the scene where I felt that Superman was basically coming in, because up to that point he was off away in Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
And so he joins the team, and for the first time in the entire movie, you get the full Justice League together. It was a great way to end the thing. And also too, they didn't do the typical superhero thing with the weird pillar into the sky, the hole in the thing, hole in the sky type of deal. I mean, it was down on the ground, so it was kind of like at the ground level, and we were all there and we got to see that. And they dealt with the villain in a very creative way. They didn't go and just defeat him directly. No, they used his own stuff against him. And it was something that they hinted early on with the whole Batman scene, that bookend ending. He hinted at exactly what they needed to do, and they ended up executing that move right at the end. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, this third act, I don't care about the CGI. People talk about the mustache that was and wasn't, and I have no idea, because and this is fully me. I was so into the film, and if people think me a lesser critic, fine, but I was so into the film, I didn't notice both times I saw it anything with any CGI mustache out or whatnot. I don't care. I didn't care. This third act was awesome. I loved it. I loved the fact how all the characters moved with each other, where it wasn't just one doing it like, you thought maybe with Batman, but everybody interacted with each other. Everyone gets a pairing. I mean, you get Aquaman with Batman, where Aquaman sits there, and then Aquaman hops on some parademons, kills them, ends up getting tossed by Cyborg.
Yep.
In Cyborg's there, he catches them and then he throws them, and then the Flash. I just loved the interaction with them. I thought was just above and I know I'll get flamed for it, I don't care, but just above some of the other teamwork films we've seen, not just superhero films, but in general, everybody seemed to work together. And even Superman and Cyborg get a great moment at the end where they separate the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
and it explodes, and just as they're just before it explodes, he's like, is there going to be kickback? And Cyborg's like, oh yeah, but we should be able to take it, and then they're leveled on their ass, and Superman says, I take that back.
Because he basically says he doesn't want to die. Cyborg says, I don't want to die either, and then he takes that back. I want to die.
It explodes, and they're on their back, and they're hurt, and he goes, yeah, I take that back. I want to die. And Cyborg's like, I don't even know the physics of my feet hurting. I should.
Yes.
It's a great moment, but what I loved too was that didn't feel forced either. It felt natural. By this point in the film, which is like the last 10 minutes when we get this showdown, it didn't feel forced, the humor between them, because you felt these guys got together. And yes, Superman looks a lot better in a lot brighter blue and red than what we've gotten before. And that also reflected the fact we don't have brooding we have closer. I will not say for sure, but we get closer to the type of Superman we got with Christopher Reeve. With the final Cavill Superman that we got at the end of this movie, I think we got closer to because he had the smirk the whole time too when he was fighting Steppenwolf. Like, yeah, I got this. Because you run into
absolutely.
Because you run into a problem with Superman, and it's the problem I have with a few of these superhero comics is, dude, you look at him, he's like, who really is going to, I mean, it took Doomsday to kill him, but you don't really have that edge of threat with him unless he's in front of some kryptonite. Outside of that, or Doomsday, you're like, he should feel confidence as hell.
He does everything perfectly. Did you check out the way he made over easy eggs and BVS?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, the guy even makes perfect eggs. They make a specific shot of it. I swear I'm not crazy.
But I mean,
over easy eggs. Oh my God. Anyways, yeah, go on. Sorry.
But in this final scene, we get a happy Superman.
Yep. But it also a heroic Superman, because in the middle of the fight, after he's like getting ready, he's pounding on Steppenwolf. He could probably take him out, in a few more punches. Oh no, he's got to help some people outside. He's gone. Right? Yes, that's Superman, man.
He's like, oh yeah, wait, no, I'll be right back. I got to take care of some civilians. Like,
what? Batman's probably going, oh.
And by the way, to the people who are spreading this mustache bullshit, guess what? I use Photoshop too. And you using the little liquefy tool there to spread Cavill's lips out and make the movie look worse than it is doesn't pass the muster with people who know what the fuck you're doing. So just stop it. Your little articles might last a week or two, but in the end, people are going to watch the movie and they're going to realize, holy hell, your site is full of shit. Okay, done. Sorry.
But yes, we get a heroic ending. I love this ending. I really, outside of it, some of the CGI, I will fully admit it was spotty, but I was so into the characters. Mm-hmm. I didn't care that maybe this background was all CGI. I was enjoying paying attention to the interaction of the way they all worked as a team together. I mean, Wonder Woman and Aquaman, who are supposed to be enemies, are fighting like they've been next to each other for years. And I loved that because they're both seasoned warriors, Oh, and Cyborg would not, he was not deterred even after he gets a body part cut off, which Batman helps him get, close enough so he can reattach. He would not be deterred from his mission either, regardless of what was going to happen to him. And everybody acts heroic in this. It's so much fun. And yeah, this whole movie, then you get the two great credit sequence, the one at the end, which I wish instead of League, I really wish the escaped Lex Luthor, who's sitting on his boat full of women who left a Peter Gabriel video and decided to become guards. I really wish you would have said we need our own legion. I'm like, oh, come on, don't say our own league, say legion, because I so want a Legion of Doom.
I know that, but that's the problem. That's why they wouldn't do it that way. They wanted more of the Injustice Society or the Injustice League.
Injustice League, yeah, I know. But for me, I just like, come on.
Oh, you just want to have the Super Friends.
I so want to have a live action Super Friends. Screw that. If Marvel can have their Infinity War, I can have my Super Friends complete with the Wonder Twins.
God. Twins activate.
Dang it. Sorry.
I love that Space Monkey. Come on.
No, what is more awkward is that they're brother and sister, and he goes, form of a mop, form of a bucket of water. And you're like, okay, that's just wrong. You guys got to stop right there. Okay. It's not right. You shouldn't make those forms. Just don't do it. Okay, guys. Anyway, I'm a horrible person, I know. But now let's get to you guys. Is there something we haven't talked about tonight yet that you'd like to mention with Justice League? Paul, actually, Cole, we'll start with you first.
Yes.
Cole.
Did you say Cole? I'm sorry, Cole
yes.
and Paul.
I changed my mind. Cole, why don't we start with you first? What was the one thing you mentioned it a little earlier when Paul accidentally, when he was a mother box and got kidnapped?
That's right. Yes. Yeah, we went up there for Tad. No, I guess I really liked the battle for the box on the Amazonian island. I thought that was really awesome. And I guess my question is about action sequences in general and whether or not, a couple different people directing might be good for big budget films, whether it's the Wachowskis and in The Matrix or who are the gentlemen who have taken over Infinity War, who did that awesome Captain America movie?
The Russo brothers, I believe.
Those guys. I guess my question is to you guys, maybe whether or not it's during or post production or whatever. I remember Kevin Smith, who didn't like BVS at all, but also said, you know what, Zack Snyder needed to direct huge portions of this movie. And I agree, like maybe comic books are a medium multiple people should take a pass at. Maybe it should be more collaborative instead of, one independent guy's vision. What do you guys think?
Oh, I like that. Paul, what do you think? Do you think they should have more than just the one sole director vision for a superhero film?
I think it will depend on the source material. I mean, there are some comic books that would lend themselves well to a collaboration, but I think if there's something that is like a very intimate story, I would want one singular vision so that it's not a hot mess when you're done with it.
Yeah.
That's the only problem you do run into, though. In this one, I will say, yeah, that Amazonian battle is completely Snyder the whole way. The way it's shot, the way it's done, and I had no complaints with it. I enjoyed that. And there are complaints about people who had with the Amazon outfits, which we won't get into here because most of the outfits were very similar. Not all of them, but that's a whole nother tangent. But as far as co-directors, yeah, I think it depends on the material. I think it worked in this one, but that's because most of the film was actually shot already, from my understanding, even though they did do a lot of reshoots. It definitely depends on the material. Like, Black Panther's coming up. I could only see that being under the vision of one director, and I can't wait for that film.
Oh yeah.
But as far as this one,
when is the release?
February.
When is the release date for that?
February for Black Panther. So,
awesome.
What do you think, Cole? Do you think it determines on the material, Cole, or do you think there should be more collaborative?
Oh no, I think it definitely depends on the material. I just, I do think it's a lot for one person, and even like with the Star Wars franchise, and who's the young gentleman who lost his mind making Fantastic Four?
Oh, I forgot who, but yeah. Well,
we all did. We did.
A lot of people lost their mind watching Fantastic Four.
No, but we did a podcast on it, and I remember my sentiment was self-pat on the back. But what I said at the time was, it may have been a really bizarre thing to do, but his audience is going to follow him now, and his audience it'll be an independent audience. He's got a movie with Tom Hardy, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google it, coming out. So he will have an audience, but he might not be the type of director, nor am I, to step in and go, well, I'm going to take Batman and Superman and the Justice League in this direction. When I walked out of Batman versus Superman, I thought it was the coolest thing ever, man. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I came home. Sunday and I called our friend Scott Davis for an hour. And right before Sunday handed the phone to me, she said, hey, we just got back from Batman versus Superman. Wasn't that awesome? And he was just, oh my God.
Yeah, he hates that film. He hates it.
It was the worst fucking thing I've ever seen. And he was the first person we talked to. So we're like, wow, it's possible to hate this? So I just think that it might be a lot for one person to handle, taking on that whole vision, because I can see Schneider in Wonder Woman. Definitely. And I love Wonder Woman as well. Those are his type of visuals, his type of action scenes. And from here on out, he'll probably not be here. His family tragedy notwithstanding, I think the studio was going to cut and run.
It felt like it, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we actually have a viewer tonight who popped in, Bloodsport 1. He actually has a question for the group, and I want to bring it to you. He had a couple here. I want to drop this one for you because I think it'll help with moving towards the end of the evening. I know this is going a little long, and we've gushed plenty about this film, and I don't care if it goes a little long because it deserves to be gushed. But he asked, what do you think DC should do now? Should they do kind of a reboot? Because it did leave it a bit open for where they could start over, or stay with the current version of the DCEU and roll with it and see what they can do with it. Paul, what do you think?
They should have a movie about the two Marthas getting together in college. No, just kidding.
They should have a movie where the two people. They should have a movie where the two Marthas get on screen and give the finger to everybody in the audience and leave. That's a cut scene right there. DC, copyright it, spoiler room. At very end of the credits, just have both Marthas come up, give the finger to the audience, and walk away. I'd love that.
No, a serious answer is I think they should maybe. I think this. I don't want them to copy the Marvel formula, but I think the one thing that Marvel did pretty well was that they put all together the origin stories first, and then they did the ensemble, which made it a lot easier so that the ensemble movie could start out right away without having to really focus a lot on it. But now that they've done this with Justice League, they don't really need another origin stuff. So maybe I'm just contradicting myself. Right there. I think they should just explore the other characters that they have. And I know they were planning on doing Shazam. I think they would do a great deal of service by allowing movie directors or filmmakers working on those type of movies, because they have such a wonderful like lexicon or a back catalog of all these wonderful characters that they haven't really explored, because I think they're trying to bank on popularity. And so I think when you do something like Superman, you're going to have a lot of people that are like, you got to do Superman this way. And they're just setting themselves up for disaster. When if you go and you do something that's lesser known, like do a Black Manta movie, and people are going to be like, Black Manta, what? And you could screw that up and people wouldn't really notice. They would just focus on a really good movie versus trying to, these are movie executives stomping on my childhood again,
So you think they should just keep going, but explore the side characters a little bit more that we may not have seen on the big screen before?
Correct.
Basically. Cole, how about you? Bloodsport's question. Do you think DC would start over now, or should start over, or should they just continue with the current version of the characters that they have?
Well, I mean, their financial decisions are beyond me. And
But story
I mean,
wise,
no,
financials on the
I mean,
way.
really, I just want to say that. I mean, really, they are. I mean, they're doing things that are comprehension. We pulled up to get a bottle of wine the other night, and next to the liquor store there was a cell phone place, and the walls were literally plastered with Justice League like advertisements
Sure.
from wall to wall. So, I mean, if this doesn't do well, then it doesn't matter what I think they should do. I will say that I thought Batman versus Superman was a work of dark genius, and I enjoyed this film despite it not being more of the same.
Mhm.
This film has been less successful, and yet this is what people asked for.
Yeah.
So I don't really, and I'm not trying to throw any fan base into a box where, oh, you asked for BVS was too dark. Oh, you asked for lighter. Now we gave you light. You don't like it. Fuck you. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I loved BVS and I loved this film. I loved this film a little less. If I still gave movie star ratings, I would say BVS is like 4 stars, maybe 5. If we're talking about the extended, this is 3 stars, which I would give the majority of my own movies. I would give my own movies.
Wow.
This average, there's nothing wrong with being a really solid movie that isn't bad. There's nothing wrong with that. Wrong with being a groundbreaking, mind-boggling, not being a groundbreaking, mind-boggling movie. This isn't that. This is a really good, like, you go out to the comic book stand, like I did many times. I would ride my bike against traffic, I remember, because there wasn't a sidewalk on either side, but I ride against, next to the trees. But the traffic going by in downtown Madison was crazy. But I get to these comic book shops and just, grab as much as I could with my paper route money, bike home, and all you wanted was a really good story and some breezy one-liners and a really good fight sequence, hopefully. And Jesus, this is that.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome.
To answer Bloodsport's question, I think as well. I think they should go from. I should stay here. Justice League is a kind of a soft reset of some of the stuff they were doing that people didn't like in Batman v Superman. I like the place where all the characters are at now. I want to see more Cyborg. I want to see more Flash. I want to see more Aquaman. I think Wonder Woman, part of the reason, besides the fact it's just an awesome movie, part of the reason I think Wonder Woman was as popular as it was is because we didn't get a big screen exploration of Wonder Woman like ever. I mean, really. Yeah, I mean, you got Linda Carter's, TV series, but you didn't really get. So here you have a DC character which people know about in the comics, but we've never really seen realized in live action on the big screen. Whereas Batman and Superman have been done ad nauseum. Don't get me wrong. I love Batman. Okay. I am huge Bat fan. But I will admit that for widescreen portrayals, those guys have had their time on screen. Let's explore these other characters. Take off from here. I think if you make solid stories of Cyborg, Aquaman, and Flash, if you make those solid films, I guarantee you pull a fan base back in more so than doing, oh no, another Superman solo. You know what I mean? I mean, if I didn't see Batman and Superman again until the next Justice League film, I would have been fine. Now I know Batman's getting his solo film. I know that, but you know what I'm saying? We've explored those two quite a bit on widescreen. Now you've introduced these characters we haven't seen realized on the big screen. So DC, give me more of them because I'm really interested to see where you could go with these guys.
So do you guys think, like, honestly, this is just a quick question, like, if this busts, because it's an amazing film, and I'm going again tomorrow or the next day, but if this thing busts, doesn't go that great, will they continue with these actors in the story, you think?
Look at how many fucking Resident Evil movies they made. Okay,
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Look at how many.
The thing is that did make a lot of money back for the.
Well,
for
no,
them,
it
though.
did. I mean, I know it did. I know they were at least still fairly successful, but still, as they went along, they didn't make as much.
Yeah,
you know?
that's true. It's because the story got a little bit watered down.
See, and Bloodsport even agrees with me. He says Super Friends movie with Legion of Doom is actually a bad idea. Yes, please. I think it would be fun. I think it would be interesting.
Why doesn't Warner Brothers hire the people that they use to make the animated movies that they do? Because if you watch like any of the animated movies,
oh hell yeah, they're hands down
notch. Yeah,
they're hands down better than the Marvel animated films.
Well, even some better than some of the movies outright.
Yeah. Right.
So they should just take those writers and then put them into the writing of the stories. And I think you would have had a much you would have had a much better Justice League. You would have the Justice League that would have put this movie into my number one spot. Yeah. Because I think those writers are amazing what they've done.
They are, which I think has some people, some DC fans especially, confounded on how they could have the animated films be written so well. And this felt closer to one of those animated films than the other. Did. It really did. When I watched them, like, this feels more like a DC animated film.
Man, seriously, I've watched a lot of those with my stepson, and it felt like that. It really did. I thought, man, this is right on par with that.
The way it was cut, the way it moved, I'm like, this really feels closer to one of those. So yeah, great question, Bloodsport. I appreciate you listening in too tonight. Woohoo for our one viewer. Paul, how about you with one thing we may not have covered tonight? We're going long. I don't care.
Okay. What is your must-have for Justice League 2?
Oh, Paul, Cole, go ahead. What's your must-have?
Oh Jesus, I could cry. If I ever got a Justice League 2, man, I really like what they've done. I really like where they're going. I can be honest. I'm sure I've said this before to our but I Man of Steel was the first date movie with my fiance, wow. I mean, who I've been with for 5, 6 years, whenever that came out. So it's like, and we've seen every movie since, and that doesn't impact my notion of the movies, but I followed this franchise, and I've seen kind of the complaints, and I followed the complaints from what about all the destruction to all the buildings and all the people dying, and like, wow, this really Man of Steel introduced that? Jesus. And I've seen all of the complaints, and it really has gotten weird to me, to the point where, as I told you guys, my best friends in the world, Scott Davis, I called him up, and I was sure he was going to love Batman versus Superman. He's like, no, that was garbage. So I don't really know where it's going to go, and the reaction to this has been awful, apparently, aside from the three of us here. But if I got Justice League 2 with these same people, it would be really nice to have a little bit more of some just setups for the scenes. These scenes were great, but they're abbreviated scenes. I'd like to have some more character meat. I'd like to get darker with all of the characters, but especially the new ones. I'd like to see, why is Aquaman emptying bottles of liquor exactly? I mean, that's really hip and cool, and we love it. But I want to get deeper into that, and all of that stuff.
Well, Aquaman movie is coming out next year so far scheduled. So you will get to probably see some reasons why he downs whiskey. He drinks like a fish.
Yeah!
Sorry. couldn't resist that one. Paul.
If you weren't going to say it, I was going to say it.
I know. To answer your own question, Paul, what about you? What do you want to see?
I want to see Darkseid at least.
Oh yeah, well I think that's a given that
Yeah.
if we can get to that point, we'll see him.
But I would also really love to see more characters, maybe like Plastic Man or Supergirl would be awesome to
Green
have
Lantern.
in Green Lantern, especially.
Green
If
Lantern,
get the entire core would be awesome. Awesome.
There has been, I think there was talk about possibly the core getting their own movie, but I
Yeah.
believe that was just development hell or whatnot. Yeah, Green Lantern. I'd love to see. He's a character.
Which version? Which version?
Oh, which version?
Yeah, Hal Jordan, John Stewart, or
Jon Stewart.
Guy Gardner.
I want to see John Stewart.
There's another guy too, but I can't remember his name. Yep,
Yeah, I want to see. I would love to see
John Stewart.
John Stewart as
Amazing. Yep.
as the
Lantern.
I think it'd be a bold move as well,
Yeah.
for Hollywood.
Mm.
I think it'd be cool, really cool to see a John Stewart, do something different. Might as well, that's the one thing I think they just start to see it here, in Justice League, in that it's almost a feeling like, you know what, people are gonna hate it anyway, so fuck it, let's just do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Third act is just like, fuck it, people are gonna hate it, let's roll. For me, yeah, what I want to see for the Justice League 2 it'd be cool to see other characters brought in. Green Lantern would be cool to see. Maybe Supergirl, maybe.
But they've been hinting at her since Man of Steel with the side-along comics and stuff like that.
Maybe, but even more so, I'd like to see. Actually, who I'd like to see get the big screen treatment is Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, definitely.
Manhunter would be awesome on the green.
If they don't horribly do the CG though,
or you know what, you could get away with doing it doing Hawkman.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
Hawkman would be fun, I think, as well on the big screen, because the TV series he did away with them, so did away with the Hawk people. Yep, I just spoiled the TV series for you too. Boom, 2 spoilers.
Well, and the Wonder Twins. We know you want the Wonder Twins.
We know we want the Wonder Twins. No, I don't want the Wonder Twins in a live action. People already hate these films, and that would just give them more fuel to the fire. Though I would love to see that. But yeah, I'd like to see more characters, more meat. You know what? I'm actually liking this formula of let's introduce the characters here together, and then give them their solo films later. Oh, and Bloodsport makes an excellent suggestion. Bane, getting a good Bane, for one. The Bane, even the Bane in the Dark Knight Rises, or the Dark Knight, excuse me, wasn't quite the Bane from the comic books. I'd love to see the actual Bane from the comic books, and they could do it. I think that would be awesome.
Well, if they did do the Legion of Doom, that would be.
Oh, yeah. Give me some Legion of Doom, baby. I want some Brainiac on my screen.
Oh, that sounds disgusting.
It does sound disgusting. Well, we have gone almost 2 hours tonight for this one. I did not expect it. We haven't done a 2-hour episode in a long time. One of the things, did that answer your question, Paul?
Most definitely.
Just briefly, I want to bring up Danny Elfman coming back to do a full score for a superhero film. Danny Elfman's done some themes here and there, but he hasn't really done a full. I don't think he's really done a full superhero score for some time, and he's back in here. And I'm sorry, I still got chills. He managed to work in not only a bit of the
Batman and
the Batman theme, his Batman theme. He also worked in the original Superman theme in there, plus some music from Man of Steel as well.
Mm-hmm.
He even used a bit of Wonder Woman's theme in there as well. People have complained about the score. I loved the score. Holy shit, bringing it back with that theme suddenly puts us in the storyline of Ben Affleck's old Batman is the old version of Michael Keaton's young Batman. And if you look at how the Batmans are portrayed, tell me you couldn't see the line drawn between those two.
Yep. Well, and they also draw back a reference to the little penguin things.
They draw back to a reference with the life was a lot simpler when we life was a lot simpler when we were dealing with exploding wind up penguins.
Yep. Perfect, right?
That was a great reference, and I'm sitting here going, I dug this music and the fact he worked these themes in there, especially for an action film where you got a lot of other special effects. You get these themes to come out, and oh man, when he brought back the Batman Returns theme, that first scene on the rooftop with Commissioner Gordon, who is Commissioner Gordon, and I guess that'll link the Marvel movies together because with the original Spider-Man films, because there's another two twin brothers there, Commissioner Gordon and
William Dafoe was supposed to be in this one too,
and Jane Jonah Jameson, but I digress. But the music, when you see Batman up there and you get that original theme from Elfman, I'm like, I got goosebumps because that's one of my all-time favorite scores. And like, holy shit, they did that. In these reboots, they normally don't revisit at all a classic score from the original. And the fact they worked that in there, plus they worked the Superman's theme back in there, I'm like, hell yes. Thank you. I love the music. Cole, what'd you think of the music in this?
Man,
you didn't notice it, did you?
God damn you, Mark. I did. No, I will say, Mark is fucking with me. He knows I own like 95% of everything Danny Elfman ever did. No, yeah. I dug it. I did. I've only seen the movie once. In fact, before I came on here tonight, I listened to a couple tracks that he composed. But I haven't really had a chance to evaluate it. I'm really disappointed about the firing of the original composer because I'm a fan of his as well. So I'm kind of, when I was watching the movie, I noticed the recurrence of the Batman theme for sure, hard to miss, right? But I didn't notice John Williams' Superman score.
Yep.
I mean, that may be buried deep in the mix.
No, he works it in there when he shows up to fight Steppenwolf.
Okay.
He throws he throws Steppenwolf at one point. And you can hear it. It's partly in there where he takes a hit on Steppenwolf. It's right in the third act. It's in there. It's in there.
Oh wow. Well, in short, to answer your question very quickly, like, I thought the score was great. Danny Elfman's fantastic. His score for the original Batman is, dwarfed only by his score for Batman Returns, which is
right.
But this, I thought, the score didn't stand out as much to me.
Well, it's hard to nowadays in movies nowadays in general. The score always, especially the special effects laden superhero film, the score seems to take a bit of the back burner to where it used to be a lot more upfront. But
indeed,
Paul, how about you with this take on the score? Was it fun hearing those classic themes again?
Oh no, I wanted to hear more like Prince music because Bat Dance would have been really good in this movie.
Bat Dance, it would have been
Party Man would be awesome. No, I did enjoy it. I love callbacks to other films because I love the idea that any universe could be tied in. It's like, oh wow, that brings back emotions, brings back memories, and I love art that does that for me. So when just the fact that Danny Elfman was able to do that and just kind of pull on your little heartstrings, it was like, oh, thank you.
Well, he not only does it there when we see it, but later on during the third act, you seriously get a revisit charge of the Batmobile as the Batmobile is charging through and shooting parademons and blowing up buildings and shit. You can hear the music, and I'm just digging it. I'm like, oh hell yeah, go for it, Danny. he's like working, he worked that Charge of Batmobile, a variation of it in there, and I'm just like, yeah. I'm like, I dug the score. I'm not sure, I know some people were saying, I'm like, dude, I'm like, I hate trying to, bring up the comparison, but we've got so many of these now. A lot of the scores, don't get me wrong, they're well done, but they all sound similar. And my buddy Jim scores in the Marvel universe, they sound so similar.
Well, they're using basically the same guys.
Well, yeah. Well, and maybe it's because they were leading up to Infinity War, and it means that their themes will work in together better once, when they bring them together. Maybe that's why they're going over for all the same kind of sound. But I mean, Junkie XL theme for Wonder Woman stands out. Danny Elfman putting Batman's theme back in here stands out. Superman theme stands out. We get themes that actually stand out in this film, where in most of the Marvel films, I'm sorry, I have to listen to the score separately almost to really hear the theme you're going for. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I dug Danny Elfman's score in this. I think if you listen to it, there's such an appreciation. And the vocal songs they picked too were very appropriate and very Snyder.
Everybody knows.
Every opening up this movie with Everybody Knows, you're like, oh shit. And then, it helped give the gravity, but at the same time, as the movie goes on, he goes, oh, it's not that dark. Okay. So for me, and Bloodsport agrees. He's like, yeah, Marvel is the same prototype. Cena's prototype. At least they attempt an actual story and score, and I couldn't agree with you more, Bloodsport. I dug the score and then dug the story with Justice League, and we've talked almost 2 hours about it. So I appreciate Bloodsport sitting in and listening in for the time they have.
Balance out the haters.
All the haters.
We can balance them out with
we're balancing out here with the 4 of us here tonight. Yep. Who have an appreciation for this film. And don't get me wrong, I totally respect if you have seen this movie and you hate it. I have total respect for your opinion. You saw a different film than I saw, and there's nothing wrong with that because you saw the film and you didn't like it. But those people, and I'll avoid my soapbox. I did it with my Batman, my Justice League review. But if you haven't seen the film and you're going to hate on the movie, I'm sorry, no. If you've seen the film and you hate on the movie, by all means, okay, I gotcha. No worries. I saw Sausage Party and I hated it, and people love that movie. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You loved it? Awesome. You saw a different film than I did, and it's not an insult. It's just we see it differently. So the haters out there, if you watched it and didn't like it, we watched a different movie. Sorry to hear you didn't appreciate it. For me, I love this film. I think you get the gist. We all love this film. And we're going to end it for tonight because we've gone so long. So this will be the part here where we get people to tell you where you can find them at when they're not here. So Cole, go ahead.
I'm on Facebook, Shadows and Lovers Productions. That's you can find all of our projects and information on what we're up to on that page. And thanks to Bloodsport for listening.
And Cole has a movie out on Amazon, I believe, still.
I do, yes. The last great horror movie. Thank you for mentioning.
I'm even shilling for you, man. I'm shilling.
Yeah, well, that's the fuck. I am in the middle. For our listeners, I'm in the middle of moving. Like I am surrounded by aisles of boxes right now. So
mother boxes.
Remember the last shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yes.
Remember that? That's my life right now.
There you go.
I do apologize. Thank you, Mark. The last great horror movie, Jesus Christ. On Amazon, I worked 5 years on that, and my good friend Mark just put in a plug for me. That's rad. Thank you.
There you go. So the last great horror show movie. Is it horror show or movie? Last great horror.
Great horror movie. Yes, sir.
Yes.
It was originally called The Wake, but there was another fine gentleman in Illinois who was doing an independent movie called The Wake, and
There you go.
Nah,
Look for it on Amazon.
He's off.
There's Amazon Prime, I think,
Yeah.
as well. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
awesome. And Paul, go ahead, sir. Where can they find you at?
You can find me at ForsakenFilmReviews.com.
And also the Film Jerks podcast 2.0. He's a host of it on Astro Radio Z. Man, I'll just chill you guys next time. I tell you guys. Check out that podcast as well. The Film Jerks podcast. Paul puts together a great show there. It is a different from this show.
A lot of fun.
A lot of stuff on Astro Radio Z podcast. Our good friend Derek Carey runs. Check that out as well. And we thank Bloodsport so much for their input tonight. I shouldn't say his because Bloodsport could be a girl, could be a guy. Bloodsport, thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Thank you all out there in podcast land for listening to us gush for 2 hours on Justice League. Now, say good night, gentlemen.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, folks.